please.
At Drayton School, there's been a serious incident in a Year 9 science class. Harriet Wall, Head of Learning Support, is about to put into practice the school's distinctive behaviour management system.
Is it for you?
Yeah.
What's happened?
I got accused of spit.
You've been accused of... Right, OK. So tell me exactly what's happened.
There's spit on the table.
Right.
And it's about a metre away from me.
OK.
And just because I got Matthew's book and wiped it off,
right.
he sent me out for it and he said it was me.
OK. How does Matthew feel about you using his book to wipe off spit off the table?
He finds it funny.
Does he? OK, let me just go and ask the teacher what's happening.
Restorative justice focuses less on instant punishment and more on encouraging children to think through the consequences of their behaviour.
Right, how would you like me to deal with this one then? So basically it's going to have to be the front table.
Two-thirds of the class were not involved. I'm not sure who is involved on this one.
Okay.
My suspicions are this end and that end of the table, and the middle were caught in the crossfire. That's my suspicions, but no one is owning up to anything.
Right, we've got a spare room here. I'll take out the top tables then.
OK, D8's probably spare.
Drayton in Banbury came out of special measures 3 years ago, and last summer every Year 11 student achieved at least one Grade A to G GCSE. Restorative justice, or RJ, is a key part of the school's strategy for improvement. It's aimed at developing pupils' emotional literacy and creating a better environment for learning.
Guys, it's actually really quite serious, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really... Whether it was done as a joke, it's actually really quite an immature act to do, isn't it, to spit across the room when the teacher's not in the class. All right, now, obviously, some people here have got absolutely nothing to do with this. OK, so I would quite like people to be quite honest at this point.
I did some of it.
Thank you. You haven't done any of it?
Some of it. Yeah.
No, thank you, Luke, for being honest.
Someone was chucking at me as well.
Right, this is what we need to get to the bottom of. Anybody else want to own up?
He does.
Thank you. Matthew?
I ain't gobbed.
You haven't. Jade? No. Orion?
No.
Right, OK, so the rest of you, OK, I'd like you to go back into the class. I'm going to come and see that you have settled.
RJ is based on asking pupils a number of key questions. What happened? Who was affected? And how can things be put right?
So, do you have any idea how you've just affected that class?
We gobbed all over it.
OK. So who's been affected now?
The classroom.
Yeah, anybody else?
Teacher, people, Mark.
OK, Mark. So what can we do now? What, you know, what's the right thing to do now to get this sorted? Because you've got choices to make, haven't you? I mean, Luke, you've got serious choices to make. OK, you've just come back in, haven't you? And Matthew, you need to really start making the right choices. Because there's only so much a school will tolerate. And you actually have completely disrupted the learning of that whole class. So what I'm going to do is I'll ask Mr. Scott whether he's willing to have you back in the room. But I think you need to think about what you're going to say to Mr. Scott, because that's his lesson that's been disrupted for the last 10 minutes. Thank you for being honest. OK. Thank you for realising the extent, OK, and how you've affected the class. OK, are we ready to go back in and try and learn? I think we need to ask Mr. Scott, because it's going to be on his say, isn't it? Because he might actually decide that he doesn't want you in there. A minute.
I've cancelled the practical.
Right, OK.
So I've run out of time now, so they're going to do some bookwork. They seem to have settled.
OK, I think these guys want to say something to you. They've admitted the spitting and completely disrupting your class.
Right. OK.
They'd like to come back in and learn, and I don't know what you want to do as a consequence. I can take them if you want me to take them away, or whether you want to deal with it yourself.
I need to clean up now.
Okay.
Right, and I think actually that I'm still quite
Angry
cross
at
with
them.
what's
Fair enough.
happened. And Matthew has done some work in the lesson, but Luke did very little work and has disrupted earlier, so I'd actually like Luke definitely out. Matthew, if he is willing to carry on working, can come back in, but I'd rather Luke stayed out.
Okay.
In this case, RJ was only partially successful. The boys accepted responsibility and seemed to recognise who was affected, but weren't able or willing to suggest ways of putting right their wrongdoing.
I think you're going to have to make some real choices, Luke, aren't you?
In practice, RJ rarely produces instant results, but the staff believe that applying it repeatedly and consistently encourages students to try to repair the harm they may have caused.
Can be a long process. Sometimes young people don't want to talk about what they've been involved in, and they don't want to accept maybe the harm that they've caused. And I think that can be quite wearing, because you're working very hard, it's either upstream, to be honest, to try and get young people to become accountable.
I think you trust the teacher who has come on response. You know that they are going to get to the bottom of the problem, and they always ask whether or not you are willing to take the person back. So you have the opportunity to say, well, actually, no, I don't want that person back in the room at this time. It gives you time to calm yourself down as well, so that you don't immediately shout at any other pupils and that sort of thing, or carry on an argument with a pupil, because as soon as voices get raised, the pupils here do react badly to that and will shout back at you, and then the situation just escalates.
Jane, did you say Daniel?
Harriet is trying to track down a Year 8 pupil who's run away from a teaching assistant after an incident in the computer room.
Ah, Daniel, just the young man I'm coming to see. Right, well, let me just tell you, Miss Cruikshank's actually quite upset with what's your part of it, because you actually have quite a good relationship with Miss Cruikshank. Okay. So, what part did you play in all this then, Dan?
Just took the piece of paper and went
Okay, and then what did you do?
to the outside and gave it Porky.
Okay.
Put it somewhere.
And what had
Then he
Miss
took
asked?
it away.
Right, what had Miss asked you to do?
Stand down the centre.
Okay, so how do you think your running off has affected her?
I don't know.
What do you think she might be feeling?
Sad.
Okay. Are you willing to come along and just come and see her now? Come on then.
Wherever possible, Harriet tries to bring all parties together in a mini-conference.
Okay. Right then. We're here, okay, because of the incident that happened this morning, right? And it's not about Daniel making out to be a good or a bad person here, but we just need to think about what's happened and how that's affected people, okay? And then try and come up with a way that perhaps we can make it right, okay? Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a few questions to both of you, okay?
The perpetrator always speaks first. It encourages them to take full responsibility for their actions.
Listen. So I'm going to ask you first, Daniel. Okay, what do you think's happened this morning?
Well, Porky was printing off something, but I don't know what it was about, because I didn't get a chance to look at that paper. I just screwed it up.
Okay. Okay, and then what happened?
No, I just ran out of the learner set room. Miss Cruikshank said stay. No, I gave it Porky outside, and I don't know if he chucked it away or not.
Okay. And who do you think was affected by that?
Miss Cruikshank.
Okay, and how do you think she was affected?
Or not listening to her orders.
Okay. Miss Cruikshank, could you tell us what happened?
Wow, I was in here working with someone else, and another student came in and said that they're printing weak pictures. So I went into where they were on the computer, and as I walked in, there was someone coming out of the photocopier, and Daniel took it very quickly, screwed it up and did a runner.
And how have you felt since, Miss?
Cross, upset, disappointed, annoyed. Disappointed more than anything.
Okay. Daniel, you've heard what Mrs. said about it all, okay? Is there anything that you want to do now to make that right?
Sorry, Miss, for not following the orders. Standing down centre.
Okay.
That's fine.
Miss, is there anything you want to say?
I'm just sorry it's happened, really. And I know Daniel, and that was all I wanted him to do, was just stay in the learning centre, not to run off and disturb other lessons, perhaps.
Right. OK, is there anything that you would like to come out of now you've had this meeting?
Well, I'm really quite pleased that Daniel's decided that he'll do this, and hopefully we can start off on a positive foot again.
OK, Daniel. So just to wrap up then, Daniel's apologised.
Yeah.
And Mrs. accepted your apology, OK? Is there anything that you might do differently in future?
Yeah, listen to the orders when the teacher tell you.
OK.
Orders.
Well, thank you, guys. Something like, I mean, that was a mini conference that took all of maximum 5 minutes. Because sometimes you might think, well, that process hasn't worked for that child. They don't show any type of remorse. But the more you do it, then it's like a small drip feed, really, that young people... I mean, Daniel has been through that process before, and it's quite important for him that he realises that the choice of his behaviour, how much they do affect people. And before that type of having an RJ conference, that would have gone on all day long, and it would have been type of... Miss was really, really angry at him and disappointed in him. But that allowed her to get that off her chest, and Daniel to actually realise what it was that he had done that had upset her so much, and then have the opportunity to say sorry.
Harriet is prepared to persist with restorative techniques despite the sometimes slow progress, and the concerns of some critics that children may be getting off lightly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say it's a pink and fluffy option, but actually it isn't. What you're actually asking a child to do for the first time is to take into account what they've done and become responsible.
Major incidents are dealt with in a full conference to which a number of parties are invited, including parents. One of Harriet's first conferences involved a group of girls in a bullying incident who are now the best of friends.
It kind of actually changes people, because in year 7, year 8, I was like really loud, really like in people's faces, and if I didn't like somebody then I'd tell them, and I'd be really quite rude and really, really loud. But then after doing the restorative justice, it sort of matures people. People start to think, actually...
Makes you feel more grown up.
Yeah, you think about the consequences of what you're going to say and what you're going to do and how it can affect other people. Instead of just you feeling a little bit guilty, you're feeling really intensely guilty. And I think it's because of the circle, really. You're in a circle and you can look at everybody, you can see everybody, you can see how they're feeling, and it's like as if you're in a really small, compact circle.
You take notice around you.
Yeah, and everything that's happening around doesn't matter. It's all about this circle and what's happening and the emotions being thrown at each other.
RJ works because you're sharing one language, and that is the language of emotions. And you're asking young people to tell you what's happened. They're having a chance to actually speak to you and give their account.
I feel that classrooms are more positive now in the rooms that I teach, because they feel that I do actually listen, because in the style of questioning, you're asking them about themselves.
Restorative justice places heavy demands on staff, but the long-term rewards for both students and the school can be enormous.
The moments when it does work completely outshine when it doesn't, because you can really see sometimes that for a young person that has got it wrong, they actually have an opportunity through the restorative process to make it right again. And it really, just when that happens and a child gets to closure, even when they've been the negative party, so to speak, that makes it all so much worthwhile.